What's going on, everyone? I'm on the mic by myself tonight, just back from the Western Hunt Expo. I'm going to be covering Backpacking 101 in this podcast. It's probably going to end up pretty long and end up a two-part series. I do want to say thanks to everyone that helped out at the Western Hunt Expo. I don't usually stay for all of the shows. I really don't go to very many shows at all, but it was a good turnout. We did, I think, almost triple in sales from last year at Born Primitive, so that was good to see. I got to, see a lot of friends and meet new people, which was great. Got to see a lot of new gear as well. I'm going to do a different podcast on some of the highlighted gear that I saw at the Western Hunt Expo, as well as just different stuff I've been trying out. That'll be a different podcast, obviously. I don't usually get excited about too much gear, but there was, a few different things that I definitely wanted to highlight that I think are worthwhile to look at, including, like I said, some things I didn't see at the show. Some food stuff, actually. There's a bar that I just got that. Anyway, I'll talk about that on the podcast. So on the Backpacking 101 podcast that I'm going to do now is kind of parallel what we'll be doing on the Academy courses that you can sign up for, kind of what you'll learn at those courses or some of the courses, as well as YouTube videos that we'll be doing, and that's like land navigation, fire building, knot tying, setting up shelters, different types of shelters, different types of air pads, things like that. So with the Backpacking 101, though, I'm just going to start out kind of from what I see people asking me most questions about, go through from pack fitting, sizing, all the way down through all the gear, the fitness and food and everything else. And we've done videos on a lot of that stuff. So so out of the gate, I'm going to just talk about backpacks. With backpack hunting, and this is backpack hunting. I'm not going to talk about day hunting too much. So backpack hunting, the size of the backpack that you need. You're definitely going to want a framed pack. And then you're going to need different sizes, depending upon if you're super ultralight or whatever, but these are going to be general sizes. If you're like some crazy dude that can do, 10 days with, 24 pounds and I don't know, whatever, 3,500 cubic inch pack, like more power to you. But most people can't do that. So this podcast is general size info, and that I know I won't get you in trouble by giving you this information. And there are people that probably pack too much shit, and there's definitely other people that, don't pack enough. So, or pack less than other people would need. So out of the gate, generally I think whether you're doing, a 1 to 3 night trip or a 3 to 5 night trip, you should, 5,000 cubic inches is a safe bet. Now, 1 to 3 nights, you certainly could get away with that 35 to 4,200 cubic inches. But as a rule of thumb, I would say you want a 5,000 cubic inch backpack, roughly. And that's whether you're doing 1 to 2 nights or you're doing 5 nights. And so I would say 5,000 cubic inches for 5 nights or less. The reason for that is one, if you don't, everybody, people say like, if I have a bigger pack, I just fill it up. Don't do that. Whether you use a meat shelf or not, or a load sling or whatever you want to call it, I generally put the meat inside the bag. I'm going to cover that later in the podcast. But it's always not, I've never, come off the mountain saying, wow, my pack is too big. But I've definitely come off the mountain saying, wow, I wish my pack was bigger. So just 5,000 cubic inches, roughly. When you get into that 7 to 10 day size, you're really looking at 7,000, 6,800, 7,200 plus cubic inches when you're at 7 to 10, days. And when you really get into that 10, 12, 14 day, you're packing pretty Spartan, and you're definitely going to be at 7,800 plus. And that may be with pockets attached, or you got shit strapped to the outside. So you could get away, with 14 days, I can do 68 to 7,200 cubic inch pack, but I'm definitely going to have, probably my shelter strapped to the outside. And as I go through some of the stuff, I'm going to give like tidbits and tech tips, like, never strap your sleeping bag to the outside of the pack, because your sleeping bag is your life. The shelter, still a little iffy, but you got to do it sometimes. So anyway, that size. So 5,000 cubic inches for 5 days or less, 5 to 7 days ish. You're going to want to start getting into that 6,500 cubic inch range. And then that 7 plus days, again, you're 7,200, 6,800 plus, roughly. Frame sizing, really like a 24 inch tall frame is going to work for someone up to around 18-ish cubic inches, depending upon how much weight you want to carry on your shoulder. So 24-inch tall frame for 18-inch torso or less. And that's going to be somebody that's like 5'8" with a 32-inch inseam, roughly. And you can Google, and we can do videos on this, on torso length and everything else, how to measure your torso length. But you get into that 19, 20-inch plus, you really want to get a 25, 26-inch frame. Now, if you're just a gigantor, generally, I mean, there's some pack companies out there that make taller frames. But, if you got a 23, 24-inch torso, you're probably kind of screwed. And what that has to do with is the load lifters and the ability for that shoulder strap or load lifter that comes off your shoulder strap that attaches to the frame. When you pull on that, you want that shoulder strap to lift up off your shoulder to transfer the weight down to your hip bones. And I'll do videos on this and have done many. So that's for frame sizing. Now, as far as companies out there, I haven't used an EXO that much. I know that K4 frame is pretty good from what people have told me. I've had some clients use it. But for what I know right now, the Kafaru, obviously, I worked for Kafaru for many years. The Kafaru is a great option, Initial Ascent, and Stone Glacier. Those are three really good options that I've used and tested. Again, the EXO frame or EXO is good, but I haven't tested it that much. Now, the Mystery Ranch is not bad. One of the things I found is it does squeak, that new Guide Light frame. And when I say squeak, all of them will squeak at some point, but that one squeaks a little bit more. So Kafaru, Initial Ascent, and Stone Glacier. And all those companies make multiple bag sizes, so that's good. Now, attachments on the bags. I really suggest go as lightweight as you can. I don't get too wrapped up in the ultra lightweight stuff. I want a moderately weighted pack. So, somewhere around 7 pounds, I'm super fine with. Meaning, whether my pack's 5,000 cubic inches or 8,000, somewhere around 7 pounds is fine. 5.5 to 7, you're gold. When you start adding a bunch of pockets on that, that's where it starts to get a little heavy. And I'm between Spartan and holy shit, I've got way too many pockets, right? I'm like happy medium. I mean, it need a few pockets. So I don't want to add a ton of stuff onto my pack personally, but I do want a lid. Now, whether that lid can be worn for a final approach pack, run down and get water, pissing around camp or whatever, you do want a lid, and you want that lid for a few different reasons. One, for overflow. So if you really got to load up the bag, I like to put my spotting scope between my lid and my bag when I'm going in. I just did a video on that you can see on YouTube. So yeah, a lid. Nalgene bottle pocket, depending. The Stone Glacier Nalgene bottle pocket, not so much for me. I like that pack system, but that kind of sucks. Initial Ascent, that was a solid system. It kind of goes between the three-piece belt, the part against your hip bone, and the lumbar pad. Stays secure. Obviously, like the Kafaru, helped design that. So, yep, I like that one. But if you're, Nalgene bottle pocket, I don't like a lot of hip pockets on my belt. So again, Nalgene bottle pocket for sure. I don't like to add a ton of stuff unless I just absolutely have to. So that kind of covers that. The meat shelf, load sling. I am not a fan of that on multi-day packs unless I absolutely have to use it. I'm an old school guy. I like to put the meat in the bag. Whether that is I let it cool off, it's in a contractor bag, it's in one of the newer event type bags or whatever else. I really don't care if the bag breathes or not because I let the meat cool down as much as possible. And honestly, if I get the bag bloody, again, I'm old school. I don't give a shit, right? Wash it off. Shows I've actually used it. I don't keep my stuff pristine. It's a tool for me. So the load shelf, if you have to have that, all three of the companies, counting EXO, that I mentioned, all of them have a load shelf now. The negative side to a load shelf is you are extending the weight away from your back and can be very uncomfortable. It also takes a little bit longer. Well, it takes a lot longer. That's crock shit. It takes a lot longer to get that kind of going. When I say that, meaning if you're going to put meat between the frame and the bag, it takes a little bit longer than just putting the meat in the bag. And when I put the meat in the bag, I do elevate it about 6 inches off the bottom for comfort reasons. You don't want to throw super heavy weight to the bottom of the bag when you're packing out meat. So talked about bag size. Now loading the bag. For me, I like to put my sleeping bag, pad, anything like super lightweight that consumes a little bit of space in the bottom third. So generally, if I don't need the puffy jacket, which I generally don't on the hike in, um, I am going to wad everything I can down in the bottom. Puffy jacket, an extra fleece layer, my air pad, whatever I can fit down there to consume any wasted space goes in the bottom. In the middle is going to be the heavier stuff. So my food is definitely going to go in the middle. If I use a bladder, that's obviously going to go there as well. My shelter, if that's going in there, everything like that, I kind of want in the middle. And the upper half is going to be kind of miscellaneous stuff, moderately lightweight towards the top, and things I just need to get to quicker, whatever that might be. My possibles pouch, which that'll be another portion of this. My possibles pouch a lot of times is going to be in that upper portion or in the lid, depending, but usually in that upper portion because that's going to have stuff I need to get to fairly quickly. And I don't, dry sacks, I don't mind dry sacks for certain things, but when I can keep away from a dry sack and have something kind of stuff and fill up pockets freely, air pockets or voided space pockets, I will do that. I do use one for my sleeping bag. And when I say that, especially if I'm using like one of the Western Mountaineering ultralight or, the more delicate material outer shells. If I'm using a Kafaru bag, they're pretty tough. I don't worry about that. And they're also synthetic. But a down bag, I'm going to put in a dry sack. But puffy jackets and things like that, I don't put them in separate containers. I just stuff it in voids around to fill up voids in the different areas of the bag. Same with, like I said, fleece, intermediate layers, whatever. So we got that. Again, we'll have videos on all this, and you come to courses and learn this stuff as well. So now I've got the backpack portion of it. Now I'm going to go into clothing in general. So on a backpack hunt or scouting trip or anything else, I'm pretty Spartan on clothing. And I'm going to just go over my list of gear from Born Primitive. I have one set of socks that I wear in, and this doesn't matter how many days the trip is, and I have one extra set of socks. I generally don't bring an extra set of undies until I've reached 5 nights or more. So I just don't bring extra underwear very often. I'll let them air out at night. You want to sleep without your underwear on anyway. I'll explain that later. So one extra set of socks, maybe an extra set of underwear. I wear the pants in the pants I'm wearing in are the only pants that I bring. Until it gets later in late October, I don't bring thermal underwear unless it's just going to be really cold, which is generally not the case in September. I bring usually like a 60-40 polycotton t-shirt or a merino synthetic blend t-shirt. I know cotton is sacrilege. Hold on, I got to take a drink here. Cotton is kind of sacrilege, but I generally wear some kind of a 60-40 cotton shirt. Above that, I usually have like a Ridgeline Light long sleeve t-shirt or a Ridgeline Light hooded shirt. And so that is a merino synthetic blend. And I want a hood on that just to cover myself up from the sun. After that, I'm going to use a half zip quiver fleece. In September, I'm going to wear a Tundra Light puffy jacket. That's going to be in there as well. And then I'm going to have rain gear over the top of that. Now, sometimes I will bring in some type of a fleece zippered jacket, especially if it's going to be a little bit colder. And I may flip-flop a few different things with that, but that's about all I bring. So I'm going to have the Mission Flex rain gear, Tundra Light puffy jacket, half quiver half zip, and a Ridgeline Light base. Now, if it starts to get colder, I may bring a Ridgeline heavy and the quiver half zip fleece as well as the puffy. And again, that's just going to depend on how cold it is. And then again, I have my t-shirt. I would suggest if you're going to use cotton that you don't do that on extreme hunts. So when I said the 60-40 cotton, September, Colorado, Wyoming, not really that big of a deal. But you get into more extreme shit, don't do that. Don't bring cotton. You want to probably just stick to the merino synthetic stuff. So when I say that, like if it's raining constantly and everything else, cotton is not your friend. So that's kind of my clothing. Again, if I'm going to bring fleece thermal bottoms, it's going to be when it gets into the colder months. I just don't want to carry the weight. As far as gloves, I generally bring like a cheap set, $29 leather gloves, $20, $19 leather gloves, $19, whatever. Sometimes I'll bring those. Generally, that is for manual labor. And when I say that, if I have to do any breaking of wood for a fire, I'm going to use it for that. If I've got to dig something out with my ice axe walking stick, I'll talk about that in a minute. To help, dig out some rocks. I got to make some kind of a water funnel type of a thing or whatever else. I'll do that. When I say do that, I'll do the leather gloves. If it's going to be a little bit colder, it's pretty hard to beat the merino fingerless gloves for just all around use to have those on. So those aren't a bad idea either. But again, most of the time I just bring a cheap set of leather gloves. Beanie hat, September, I don't bring some crazy thick block of lava or whatever you call it. I just use the quiver fleece beanie or like a merino wool lightweight beanie hat. That's about as most as I go. The quiver half zip has a hood. The rain gear has a hood. The Tundra Puffy has a hood. So I don't go with a crazy, because a lot of times in the morning, I'm not going to hike with it. I don't want to get my head overheating. So again, I stay pretty moderate with that. I don't bring a face mask very often or anything like that. So that's kind of the gist of the clothing. Footwear, I'm definitely a stiffer boot guy. So when I say stiffer boot, the Zamberlan 2092 is kind of been my tried and true for a long time for mountain hunts. It's a ski boot. It's super stiff. It's not what everybody's going to want to wear. It's just what I've gotten used to. And I've gotten to the point now I'm either wearing some barefoot type Vivo, the Savage one, tennis shoe, or whatever else. And when I hit the mountains, I put that 2092 on. That is not going to be for everyone, because that's more of a mountaineering, mountain goat, sheep, crazy terrain, boot, which I prefer the stiffness. So when you go down in that, the Zamberlan Guide, the Zamberlan Vios, there's a ton of boots out there. Crispy Nevada, the Brickstall. You're going to have to figure out, what's whatever flavor you like best. I would not wear anything like tennis shoes or anything else on a mountain backpack hunt or super flexible footwear, especially if you're going to kill anything and hike it out, unless you just know you're going to be fine with that. There's some people that from backpacking so much, backpack hunting, but you may not be listening to this if you already know what you're doing. So footwear wise. And then as far as treating the footwear, you definitely, the more you take care of your leather or synthetic on the boots, the longer they last. So get them clean, throw some Nick wax, bear grease is something I use. There's whatever it is, clean them up and treat them. Put some waterproofing on there a couple times a year, and get them clean. And that'll definitely help, especially if you get perforations in the Gore-Tex or whatever liner. That happens. That happens a lot. The Gore-Tex is not going to be good for probably over a year from my experience. So, that outer shell is definitely going to keep the water out, and you're definitely going to want to treat that. So, something to think about. So, footwear, gloves, I went over all that. Clothing, we're good there. So, now going to gear, sleep systems. On the sleep system is a giant, very, very deep rabbit hole that you can go in and never come out. And when I say that, you have guys that use bivy sacks, single wall tarps, single wall shelters, teepees, floorless shelters. You've got ultralight, one-man shelters, 3-season, 4-season. You've got the single wall shelters that you can put a bug net in, like the Argali. I'm going to be trying that soon. You've got a ton of different stuff. And so the more rougher terrain, the more higher the altitude, generally, the more rain you get is when you're going to or higher wind, potential for snow, everything else. That's when you want to go with a more durable shelter. Oh, and hammocks. I forgot hammocks. So there's a lot to digest with this. I don't suggest a bivy unless you absolutely have to, or if you already know you love a bivy and you're listening to this, like, shut up, Aaron, I love a bivy. I got it. You use a bivy. I've used a bivy off and on in the past, especially if I'm using a tarp and it makes sense. Kind of sucks. So I'm going to stay away from bivvies, but you can get away with just a tarp. The problem is with just a tarp, you got to deal with bugs in September a lot. So you may want to need a bug net. By the time you bring a bug net and a tarp, you're certainly at the weight, generally anyway, at some of the lighter weight 3-season tents. So let me explain the difference between a 3-season and a 4-season tent, I guess, first. Out of the gate, the poles are generally stronger. The material on the outer shell is generally more durable. The outer shell, I'll just call it the outer shell, on a 4-season tent goes to the ground for less air loss, where a 3-season is off the ground more for more ventilation. 3-season tent is all mesh generally on the inside. 4-season tent is going to be generally the material like your outer shell that hasn't been treated. So when I say treated, when they go to waterproof it, basically, that material gets waterproofed, and then that's why it has the waterproof shell. I mean, keeping this kind of black and white, there's more to it than that. But like on a Hilleberg, the internal membrane of a 4-season shelter on a Hilleberg is the same as the outer shell. It's just the outer shell has been waterproofed. So some of the differences. Stakes are going to vary too. You're probably going to get a longer, more durable tent stake. So what you want to use. If you're just, September hunting elk, right? You can get away with just about anything. You can go is hubba from a one-man hubba from MSR. An Acto is more of a 4-season lighter weight tent. A Nyack is another one, an Onion. You've got tarp tents that are Argali. The 2-man is what I looked at. Get the inner bug net. You don't have to have that. The floorless shelters, you just run Tyvek on the bottom if you want to, have something on the ground for your air pads. So there's a lot of different options. Whatever you choose, and I'll go into this in much greater detail on videos and things like that, your total sleep system weight is really what you want to look at. And you really want to stay under 7 pounds. And any lighter than that, you can go. So roughly, you want, let's say, a 3.5-pound shelter. You're going to look at about a 2-pound bag. So you're at 5.5 pounds there. You're going to want a pound-ish, roughly, pad. So you're at 6.5 pounds there. And then you got a little weight extra if you want to run a pillow or a different pad or a little heavier sleeping bag. But that 7-pound range, anything less than that you're comfortable with is a bonus. And that's where if you ran a tarp and a piece of Tyvek, you went from 3.5 pounds to probably 2 pounds or less, depending. But you can get up, shit creek without a paddle quickly with just a tarp, depending upon the weather. If the bugs are really bad, you get a snow, you got crazy wind, it's cold as hell, and then just got shit crawling on you, right? So it's going to depend on what you want to do there. But again, you rob Peter to pay Paul. Everyone pays the piper. The tollman always gets paid. That tollman gets paid on both sides of the bridge, right? And either side of the river, however you want to look at it. You go crazy lightweight, the comfort tollman can get paid. You go crazy heavyweight or heavier weight, the pack-in tollman gets paid. And when I say that, you go 6-7 miles in and you gain 4,000 or 5,000 feet of altitude, you'll pull your fucking teeth out to save weight. So the thing is with that is you do this enough, you're going to figure out what's best for you. And when I say that, kind of like the military, they're always basing the next war off the one they just fought. So if you go in and you went crazy lightweight, talked about this ton, I've wrote articles about it, and then you just get you just get hammered. You get your shit pushed in, wind's blowing, it was just a miserable, bugs are all over you, whatever. Then you're going to probably go heavier. The next time you may go too heavy, and then the hike in kills you, and somewhere in the middle you kind of wind up in a happy medium. So with elk hunting, generally not that big of a deal, unless you're hunting super early, way up high. But again, not real extreme elk hunting. So whatever shelter, but that Argali that I just looked at, which is going to be on the podcast I'm talking about with gear, 2-man Argali with the inner bug net, you're a little over 3 pounds. You can put a stove in that thing. That's a great option. I've used the Hilleberg Nyack, and I've used every Hilleberg known to man, the MSR Access, the Hubba, multiple different Nemo shelters, the, Osmo, the Dragonfly. I can't remember all the different names of a ton of them. So ping me with a question if you have one, but you don't have to go holy shit balls to the walls when it comes to a shelter for elk hunting. Pitching, knowing how to pitch the damn thing is where people really get in trouble more than anything. The angle of the stake going in and the guy lines being pitched correctly, being the correct tautness. I don't know if that's a word. If it is, I'm not sure. Either way. And then if you have to rock out the stakes for high wind, you do that so you don't get that flexing in the tent poles. So knowing how to pitch the tent and then knowing where to pitch the tent is usually damn near as important as the actual shelter you use. I'm finding out with people that don't know how to do that. A guy that I've known for a while that came and filmed for us this year had a Hilleberg Nalo that was mine he used, and the guy lines he pitched on the back and the front of the Nalo, he pitched them towards the middle, not away at a 45. And so that literally made that Hilleberg Nalo shelter by default a 3-season, I guess, or less, because of the way, if the wind blew correctly, would blow it down because it was pitched incorrectly. So learn how to pitch your tent, learn how to tie knots, and learn how to rock out your stakes where it's not going to, if there's a lot of wind, not rubbing up against the rock and potentially cut your guy line, which can happen in high wind. So 7 pounds or less is a gift on those moderate, October and earlier hunts. You're probably going to have to go heavier than that later in the season you get. Sleeping pads. I need another drink. Ooh. Sleeping pads. So you don't need a whole lot of R value. And what the R value is like the effectiveness or the heat. What does R value mean? Relative effectiveness, maybe? It's that RE factor. That's explosives. So anyway, the R value is basically how cold you can sleep with the pad. So you get something that has like a 2.7, 3.1, 3.5, whatever R value. That's a 3-season shelter, or 3-season pad. So you can get away with some pretty Spartan pads as far as R value in September, unless you just get a freak storm, which can happen. So some of the pads that I've used, the Sea to Summit Ether, the Ether Light, Thermarest X Light, the X Therm, Big Agnes Q Core SLX, and they just keep upgrading these pads. So the Big Agnes Q Core's R value is not great, the SLX, or the big thick one I have. But it's a really thick pad. It doesn't weigh a ton. It's 20 ounces, so it does weigh a lot. But anyway, it's thick. It's comfortable. That Ether Light and Ether from Sea to Summit, that's a pad that's really, I've used quite a bit. I did put some holes in that thing, but the Thermarest X Therm and X Light are another great pad. Just make sure, rock around a 3.5 or more R value if you want to be safe. Look at something like that X Therm from Thermarest. But just make sure that you're not sleeping in crazy cold weather with a crappy, R value on your pad. I wouldn't go with just a foam pad unless you're one of those crazy people that likes foam pads. They're heavy. They're not really, you don't save you any weight. There's not very much comfort to them. There's a reason we don't use those anymore. That's what we did. That shit's what we did back in the 80s and 90s. Don't do that. Get an air pad. Always bring a patch kit. Always. I'm going to say it again. Always bring a patch kit. Inevitably, you'll put a hole in your pad and you're up shit creek without a paddle. If you can't, 1, find the hole, and 2, don't have your patch kit. So always bring that patch kit. And I would strongly urge in your Possibles pouch to get on Gear Aid, its website, and get a patch kit. Get Gore-Tex patches. Bring some small bottle of the seam seal, Gear Aid seam seal. Bring some of that stuff and just have some extra, because you can patch sometimes your shelter, depending upon if it's sil nylon, sil poly, what kind of outer, some shelters you can patch and it sticks to it, some can't. But you can patch your air pads, you can patch your rain gear, your puffy jacket, whatever. So bring the patch kit that the pad comes with and bring extra too. It's very worth it. You may not use it all year, but man, when you need it, you need it. So bring that. So now sleeping bag. People get super worried on sleeping bags. I used to bring a 15 everywhere I go. Now I bring a 30-degree bag, a lot of 20 degrees. So just kind of figure, do you sleep cold? Figure that out. How resourceful are you? Meaning, if your feet get cold, your body's fine. Throw your puffy jacket around your feet when you go to bed. But I would say for September, 20 degree is more than enough. 15 for sure. And when you grab your bag, a 20-degree bag again is more than enough. Just make sure, don't get in the bag cold. There's not little people in the bag that make it warm, right? It's an insulator. So if you put something cold in your bag, it insulates the cold. I've wrapped my bag around meat that is hung overnight that got cold, and I'll put my bag around the deboned meat to keep it cool all day. Just because it keeps you warm at night, that doesn't mean that it warms up everything. It's an insulator. And so if you get in a bag cold, if you let your feet get cold and your blood circulation's not great, you're dehydrated, you're kind of setting the bag up to fail. So when I see people that have used good bags and say the rating's not correct, dig a little bit deeper. They were cold when they got in the bag. So 20-degree bag for September is more than okay. 2, do push-ups before you get in the bag. Walk around the camp. Do that. Heat up your peak refuel, whatever food you're using. Put, as that reconstitutes and rehydrates, put that in the foot box of your bag. So when you dive in the bag to eat, your feet are warm. So things like that. Think about those things. I generally try not to ever sleep in my socks because I want my feet to dry out and not get soft overnight. Generally, I'm going to take my socks, either hang them in the tent, or put them in the bag down by my feet to hopefully they'll dry out a little. That works a little better with synthetic bag. But yeah, if I can get away with sleeping without my socks on, I'm 100% going to, but I may wrap my puffy jacket around my feet, at least in the beginning, till the bag warms up. With the bag size, do not buy a bag that's too big or too small. So if you buy a bag that's too small for you, both in length and circumference, you're going to push against the insulation. It's going to flatten it. You're going to lose the loft of the insulation, and you're going to get cold. In reverse, if you are little, sleeping in a giant bag, it takes way more body heat to heat up that bag. And so it's going to take longer for it to heat up. So for me, I'm a 62-ish, if not more. 64 is better circumference, and I'm a big boy. When I say I got a big chest, I like to pretend I'm all muscled up. So 6'1", 220, a meaty 220 pounds. So I want 64 inches if I can on the circumference of the chest. So bags that I suggest: synthetic, Cafaro. I don't know that there's a better synthetic bag out there. So synthetic bag, get a Cafaro. Down bags, I've used mostly Western Mountaineering for the last 20-ish years. The Badger, Alpine Light, Bristlecomb? Yeah, I think it's called a Bristlecomb. Anyway, 20-degree, 15-degree bag or more. Recently tried the Stone Glacier bags. Those are good. That new Argali bag is really good. I was very impressed with that Argali bag for a down bag. In fact, I'm probably going to swap from using Western Mountaineering to the Argali or the Stone Glacier for my down bag. And again, I don't get in a 0-degree very often in September. So if you want to save weight, don't get a heavy bag and don't get one more than you need. You're going to end up having it unzipped all damn night. It's going to be like a quilt anyway. I'm not diving into quilts because I'm not a fan of quilts. If you like them, I'm glad. I don't like quilts. I'm just talking about bags. So yeah, remember that on size. Now pillows, there's an X bed. Make sure you get a pillow that has a fuzzy, fluffy outer shell if you're going to pack a pillow in. You don't have to pack a pillow in. That's more of a creature comfort thing. I don't really sleep that much as it is, so I need all the help I can get when it comes to sleep. So I bring a pillow. There's a Velo. I can't remember all the names of the different pillows. X-Bed's got one. Should have wrote this down. Anyway, make sure it's got a fleece, happy little outer layer on it, so you're laying your head on fleece. That's probably all I want to cover. I'm just trying to think. I don't want to leave anything out. That's good enough for the sleep systems. Now on hammocks, which I don't have as much experience in. The War Bonnet Blackbird XLC, I think is what it's called, is definitely one that was really high rated. There's another one, an Amok, which you actually tee off when you sleep in that. That's a good option. But I'm going to leave that to Kurt, my partner in crime, Gavin Shea. He's a hammock guy, and so I don't want to touch on that too much. But they are comfortable. My buddy Colton Gilman, I know he runs a hammock. I've never got down with the hammock sickness, so I don't want to comment on that too much. So now we've covered shelters a little bit. We've covered the sleep system. Stoves. Man, you can... that's another wormhole you can dive down. I really like an MSR reactor, but it's heavy. Man, I don't know that really or a wind burner is another one, or whatever the hell it's called. I'm not a fan of jet boil. JetBoil is anti-hunting. Now, no matter what anybody tells me, whatever you message me, when you beat the people that actually own JetBoil, I met him at the OR show a few different times. South Cox didn't agree with me. He met him. You can ask South. They do not like hunters. And if somebody wants to prove me wrong, every time I hear this, I go to the OR show and meet with them. They're not a fan of hunters. When I say that, the Outdoor Retailer show. If they've changed, that's awesome. I will not support JetBoil for how they acted towards me and other hunters that I know and the higher ups there. If I'm wrong, something's changed, great. So piss on JetBoil. I'm not going to talk about them. MSR, cool with hunters, but I don't know that you need the reactor. It's expensive. Will it last forever? 100%. It's definitely my favorite stove. When in doubt, bring the reactor. But if you're trying to save weight, an MSR pocket rocket, and I've done multiple videos on this, but an MSR pocket rocket or the deluxe or whatever they call it, and something like the Ollie Camp or the Fire Maple, it's got a reactor system on the bottom of it, pot. You're looking at $80 for the whole thing, maybe less if you get that Fire Maple or the Ollie Camp. I think it's called Ollie Camp pot, and then a reactor, and then a pocket rocket stove. It's great. It's cheap. Again, I use the reactor a ton, but you're saving weight going with that thing. There's multiple different. Evernew makes a bunch of different titanium pots. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Soto makes a bunch. MSR makes a bunch. But you can get away with a pretty Spartan system. But where you're going to see the difference, you got to talk about like BTUs and everything else. But dollars to donuts, what you really want to worry about, rubber meets the road. How fast does my shit boil water? That's what is important. And so when I crank it on, does it boil fast? And how much fuel is it burning? And so if I have something that just boils water in 30 seconds, but half the bottle is consumed, I didn't really gain anything. So that's what you want to kind of figure out. And when you use anything without that kind of reactor heat exchanger bottom, it's going to take longer to boil. So you want a bigger base on your pot rather than a smaller one. And you want to run titanium when you can. You can't really cook in titanium as well, but if you're just boiling water, there's something to be said. That Ollie Camp and, a Soto wind burner is a great option that's lightweight. And that pocket rocket, there's a bunch of options out there. The Soto Windmaster is a one like I've used a ton. So something to think about if you need to save weight, you need to save money, and you're not worried about having a stove for when the world ends. Don't get a reactor. Don't get a wind burner. I think that's what is it the wind burner? I think it's called the wind burner. And I think the Soto's the Wind Master. Don't get any of the kind of do-it-all systems or whatever. Just get a pocket rocket and that Ollie Camper Fire Maple heat exchange pot, and you're going to be good to go. Now, on the prepper side, the doomsdayer side, it is hard to boil water with the kits like a reactor or JetBoil, which I said I wasn't going to talk about, or the wind burner. So that's something to think about if you ever had to boil water just on a fire. So it's something to think about. Like I said, on the prepper side, a wind burner is not a great option. A reactor is not a great option. But you get a titanium pot or a cup, you're good to go. Again, I've done a ton of videos on this, but the Evernew system that I use, I have two pots. One fits inside of another. One of those is for my coffee. The other one is for my ramen or whatever else. And so, again, different systems. But for $80 or less, you can have a damn fine system that will last you a very long time. So the Soto Windmaster, the MSR Pocket Rocket are two of my favorites. The Wind Master has two different kind of fingers or platforms that you can go ultralight with a 3-prong or the 4-prong. One's a little heavier than the other. But that's a good way to save weight, good way to save money. You don't have to, get an OnlyFans page and sell foot pics. Moving on. Talk too much about that. I'm trying to, what am I missing here? We talked about stove, sleep systems, headlamps. I recently have tried a headlamp from Team Easties. I like that headlamp. I don't have a lot of field time with it. I'm going to use it a bit more this week. I do like that one, but what I've been using for quite some time is a Princeton Tech Remix or Viz. $39-ish, $29, not very expensive. Takes AAA batteries. I've had great luck with it. You can go down an insane rabbit hole when it comes to headlamps. I'm not a fan of the rechargeable headlamps for the simple fact I like carrying some extra batteries, and I don't want to have to. I can't. If I've had too many bad experiences on packouts where my batteries run out, and I don't have time to plug the fucker in, and so I want 2 to 3 or however many the headlamp takes, AAA batteries in my pack. Shit I can't see, pop them in, off we go. I don't have to recharge it. That's why I don't like rechargeable headlamps. And again, I'm more of like the guy on Taken, I guess, whatever. I'm like constantly worried about shit because I've been cliffed out, headlamps burnt out, clients have them burnt out, and just makes for a horrible night. So I'm not a rechargeable headlamp guy. So Princeton Tech Remix or a Viz, if you're going to use a rechargeable headlamp, definitely go big or go home. Something like that Team Easties that you can recharge, and I'm going to use that some more. That's going to be a headlamp that you're going to want to use. Throws a huge beam like that Team Easties. Again, it is rechargeable. If it wasn't, it'd burn through AAAs like crazy. That throws a huge beam, and that is an option. But if you're going to have, at the very least, your backup headlamp, and you want to carry 2, I always carry 2. Your backup headlamp needs to be a battery-operated headlamp, and you need to have extra batteries in there because when shit goes downhill, it goes downhill quick. So if your primary, you're going to use a rechargeable, get one that throws a big-ass beam. And so when I say that, on a pack-out, if you're on a trail, easy enough. Use the one with those 300 lumens or whatever else. If you're in the cliffs, you're in some dangerous shit, get your primary out, the rechargeable one, throw that big beam on, don't get cliffed out. If you're on a blood trail, that big beam helps a lot, things like that. So again, something to think about. You can use your primary, secondary as a, AAA battery type. But if you're going to use your primary and have a big beam, it's going to be a rechargeable one. Again, I do like that Team Easties one so far. Make sure that thing is throwing hella beam, right? You want a big beam on your primary if you're going to carry one that's rechargeable. I don't really think like a tertiary or a third headlamp is needed, but definitely bringing backup batteries is important. Communication devices. Hold on. Spit my chew out. One thing I'm going to bring up is Black Buffalo Chew. It's still bad for you. It's got nicotine, but it doesn't have the carcinogens in it. So that is something I should probably talk about more. But the Black Buffalo stuff has been badass for me. Derek Wolf showed me that stuff, so I appreciate it, Derek. Okay. Communication devices. It's getting to a point where a cell phone with technology is going to be your SAR beacon, so to speak, right? It's getting to where they're using satellites and things like that. But I'm going to stay out of that for right now because that technology's not quite there yet. So you're looking at an inReach or a sat phone. So I have a Garmin inReach Messenger. Zoleo makes one as well, but I have a Garmin inReach Messenger that I've had great luck with. I strongly suggest to carry something like that. I have the Messenger. It's an unlimited plan because I have to do business and stuff when I'm on the mountain. There's an app you get with it. You can have that or a sat phone. Now, when I'm up north, I have the sat phone and Messenger with me all the time and my phone. Too much weight, I know, but that sat phone is handy to have to call people when you need to. If you get a sat phone, just keep in mind they screw you through the drive-through on minutes. They're very expensive. It's $750. Man, it might be up to $1,200. It's expensive. On a sat phone when you go to buy the minutes. So definitely, though, carry an inReach with you at all times. They'll save your life. Looking at my notes here. GPSs. The most important thing about a GPS is knowing how to use the GPS. So if you're going to be navigating off something like Spartan Forge on your phone, that's fine. I would suggest learning how to read a map, bring a map, and have something like a Garmin Fenix 8 or Instinct 2X. Learn how to plot an 8-digit grid, or a 6-digit, 8 digits, probably a little more than you need. Learn how to land nav, but if you're going to bring a GPS, know how to use it. For me, and this is ones I'm going to suggest, the Garmin Fortrex 901 or just your wristwatch compass, or wristwatch GPS, like a Garmin Fenix 8 or an Instinct 2X. I'm a huge fan of that Garmin Fortrex 901. I've been using it since it's the 401. I have it in front of me right now because I just ordered that 901. It doesn't have a big map on it, and I don't like really reading tiny little maps. I like to have a paper map for that. So on the GPS side of things, there's so much technology out there. If you don't know how to use the GPS, fuck it, don't bring it, right? If you don't know how to use it anyway, don't bring it. Just use your Spartan Forge, your mapping software, and just make sure your phone stays charged. But I do strongly suggest learn how to navigate off a map, learn train association, contour lines, contour interval, learn all that stuff, learn how to plot a UTM or MGRS grid coordinate. We go into that, we're going to have a YouTube video up on all that. You can come out to our courses and learn that. But if you can't use your GPS, I don't know why you'd really pack this fucking thing, right? I mean, I hate to be a negative Nancy or cynical, but damn, I see pretty much everybody I know that turns the GPS on doesn't know how to use it. And that's a horrible thing to say, but it's true. So keep that in mind. Moving on, Possibles pouch. The Possibles pouch is something mountain men use for their possibles, what they might possibly need for the day. So mine is just a little, zippered pocket. And inside of that Possibles pouch, I have everything from my repair kit, backup batteries, if whatever knife I've got, my backup sharpener. Like if I got the Jackstone knife, I'm going to have that Montana knife sharpener or the lightweight Work Sharp sharpener. I'm going to have some P-cord in there or bank line, something like that. All of the things, I'm going to have all my pills in there that are important. I've gotten a little bit of shit about this, but I pack Adderall and Tramadol in that thing, or Ketorolac, Ketorolac, however you pronounce it. I'm going to have some Percocet in there, oxycodone, something. I'm going to have, like I said, Adderall. I don't take Adderall normally, even though I'm talking 100 miles an hour right now. But I will take Adderall 4 to 6 times a year. If I've got a really bad pack out, my ass is going to be popping a pain pill and taking an Adderall. And I'm going to have a good day. I'm going to get out. Whatever you need in there. When I say that, backup contacts. If you take sleeping pills, I take Trazodones to sleep. I'm going to have those in there. This isn't my med kit. This is actually a separate system than my med kit. And when I say that, whatever you might need throughout the course of the day, you get crap in your contact, you got to swap that out. Again, the pain pill thing, I'm going to have some type of a pre-workout in there, and that may be a single packet like something from ProTech. That might be something I just mix up and put in a pill bottle. Some kind of a caffeine thing I'm going to have in there. Whatever pills that you may need throughout the course of the day in emergencies, have those. Again, that's not my med kit. I'm going to carry a backup spoon inside my Possibles pouch. That's also going to be in there. So, that pouch goes with me everywhere. Day hunting, multi-day hunting. It's going in my pack no matter what. So the backup spoon's in there. If I carry in kind of interchangeable blade knife, that is along with extra blades. I'm going to have some bank line or some kind of a probably 2.3 millimeter cord inside of that thing. I'm going to have MSR Aqua tabs in there. My backup batteries are going to be in there. The pills I was talking about, caffeine, some extra drink mix, or maybe an extra emergency bar in there. Some people will put a space blanket in there. They're lightweight, but that's your Possibles pouch. So you want to have that in your pack as well. Let's see. What am I missing? I'm probably missing a bunch of stuff, but water bladder, water bottle. That's another video that we did, but that's something else. Like if you want to carry a bladder or a bottle, that's going to be kind of your own special flavor. But I'm always going to have a Nalgene or a titanium water bottle with me, generally a titanium water bottle. And when I need, I may have a 3-liter bladder in my bag with me that's empty in case I find a water source and water at camp is Spartan. I'll fill up on the way back to camp. But my camp water bladder, I usually have a 4 to 6 liter bladder for camp water in my Nalgene throughout the course of the day. If you want to be safe with that, have your 6-liter bladder at camp. And when you can fill that up, go ahead. But you might want to have an ultra lightweight 3-liter and your Nalgene with you throughout the course of the day. And when you fill up, if water's kind of Spartan here and there, you're going to fill up your Nalgene and that 3-liter and have a 4 or 6 at camp. Again, just depending. Okay, so the water purification, as we're talking about that, I don't use a pump anymore, and sometimes I'll use a gravity filter, But for pretty much everything I do now is MSR Aqua Tabs and a Sterapin Classic at times. I used to use the Classic more often and the Aqua Tabs for camp water, but now, just to save weight, I pretty much have MSR Aqua Tabs or Aqua Mira as my primary and secondary. I use it for everything. Now, you can get, some substances in your water, depending, right? You're not using a pump, so you may get some debris in there. You're going to have some debris, so you got to kind of look out for that. I've always been able to dig out a spot where I can get some clean water. So I don't carry a pump. If you're going to carry a pump, a Katadyn Hiker Pro, the MSR Guardian is expensive as shit, but it's a great water pump. The Sawyer or I have the Platypus gravity filters. Those work great as well, but those are a hollow core fiber filter, and if they freeze with water inside those little fibers, they are rendered pretty much useless. And so something to think about when it comes to that. I don't carry a pump. I carry MSR Aqua Tabs for pretty much everything. Occasionally I bring the Sterapin Classic. But yeah, that's going to be what floats your boat. If you're worried about debris, bring a pump or that gravity filter. Just make sure, again, if it freezes, you got to watch out for that. I just don't like carrying the weight of a pump, and I've done it so long now without a pump. It'd be pretty hard to talk me back into using a pump. I'm sure there's going to be situations you might run into, but again, I use that. Now, if you're really worried about being able to pull water out of a pocket somewhere, you can always pack a life straw. And if you needed to, you could suck water out of like this little pocket that you couldn't fill up your bladder or whatever with a life straw. That's another option. Again, I don't do that very often. If I go to an area that's really bad, I may throw a life straw in with my Aqua Tabs, and I can just, about your cooter vein or pop out. But I mean, you can suck water out of whatever with that, and it's not very heavy, so that's an option as well. I'll probably have to dive back into some of the gear stuff. Whatever. Kill kit, part of gear. My kill kit, I've got the applicable amount of game bags that I need. I have some orange ribbon inside of there. I always bring, it's always in my pack no matter what, that Team Eastie's Elam panel. It's just basically a big marking panel. I'll use that to flag guys in. I may flag my boots, my pack if I drop it off. I may use it for my back azimuth. That's something we'll go into in one of our courses on how I do stocks and things like that. I'm going to have that with me. I'm going to have 2.3 millimeter guy line of some sort, some kind of a cord, P cord, bank line, something inside of that thing, my knife. So, all the things I need to break down an animal and take care of it. Again, game bag, stuff like that. I am not the greatest at the med kit stuff. So I generally, on my med kit, have a pretty basic amount of crap. Leukotape, I always have at least a partial roll of Leukotape in a hard plastic case so it doesn't get all jacked up. That can save your feet. I have a little foot kit. It's got a little surgical blade in there. I have some moleskin in that, which I'll put that on, or Band-Aids, and put the Leukotape over the top. Very rarely do I use or bring moleskin. In reality, I use the beefier Band-Aids and put Leukotape over that for my feet. I'm going to have some combat gauze with a coagulant in it. I'm going to have some drugs in there and some super glue. That's it. I don't really carry anything else than that. I don't bring a tourniquet anymore because I can make a field expedient tourniquet. If you're not comfortable with that, definitely bring one of the lighter weight tourniquets. A field expedient tourniquet can be a problem if you're applying it to yourself, so having a lightweight tourniquet isn't a horrible idea, but again, that whatever floats your boat on that. So that's something I'm going to leave up to Kurt, Gamache. No, I'm just kidding. That's going to be Kurt, Gamache, or Caleb. Our instructors will go over the med kit stuff because it's just not my cup of tea. So before I forget anything else, walking sticks or an ice axe. One of those two is going to come with me. I use that New Zealand mountain gear stick a lot. It's an ice axe walking stick. It extends. A lot of people think, what are you doing? You going ice climbing or whatever? That ice axe portion of that works for leveling out my bed, digging out a seep, anything like that. And obviously, too, climbing in like heather, Pacific Northwest, that thing's really handy. It just works out a lot of stuff. Sharpen up the back end. If you're using a helicopter's landing, if you're up in the NWT, you can whack out like willows and stuff and get them out of the way so the tail rotor doesn't catch. So I like that. But as far as walking sticks go, there's a few different types out there. The same company that makes that Elam panel, Team Easties, they've got a set of walking sticks that I just got that are carbon up top and aluminum at the bottom, which is really good durability wise. Black Diamond Z poles, but the carbon portion of it is usually where it fails you. So, something to think about. But I do like those Team Easties. I've just got those, and I like the concept. I haven't got a lot of field use with them, but I do like those. So I think I've covered most of the gear. Oh, let's see. Solar chargers, battery packs, stuff like that. The battery packs. So I've done a ton of videos on this. They used to have a 24 watt. I'm actually looking at it right here. Anchor power port. They don't make the 24 watt anymore. So now they have a 28 watt big blue solar panel. That's an option if you're going to be back there a while. What I do is I carry a BioLite or an Anchor 22,000 or more MHZ. I always screw that up. Battery pack. If I'm not going to be out for very many days, I'm just going to use that battery pack. Sorry, I had to get a drink. I'm just going to use that battery pack. If I'm going to be out there for several days, I'm going to bring that solar panel, divvy that up with my friends if I've got them as far as who's carrying what. But what I'll do is I charge up everything at night, burn my battery down. The next day, I lay the panel outside of the vestibule, and I try to put my battery pack in the shade plugged into the panel. Now, I use basically a splitter type charging cord where it's got 3 or 4 different types of charging cables at the end of it. So I've got the micro USB, the USB 3 or C or whatever they call it, the iPhone one, whatever. So I can charge up everything off that one cord. I carry it with me. That actually goes, I have a shorter version of that in my Possibles pouch as well. So shorter trips, that battery pack, 22,000 or more. Longer trips, I carry that 28 watt solar panel. It's called the Big Blue. There's a ton of different companies out there that make solar panels, but really you get in that 16, 18 watt. There's just not a lot of juice in that thing. So 24 to 28 watt is what I've really liked as far as getting a lot of juice out of it to charge up your stuff. That 28 watt, and I think people forget this because I've had people argue with me how quick it'll charge up a battery pack. The higher altitude you go, the more solar or sun you're getting. So like at 12,000 feet, I don't know what the ratio is, but if you compare that to sea level, I bet it's double. Like you charge up things way faster at altitude with a solar panel than you do down below. So that's kind of my system, a BioLite or an Anchor 22,000 or more, shorter trips, and then I add that 28 watt Big Blue for longer trips to keep my stuff charges, and I have that splitter cord, at least one of those with me. I talked a little bit about this before, that Garmin 901 for a GPS to wristwatch type thing. It's a little blocky. But as far as watches go, the Phoenix 8, I just upgraded to that. Is a great option if budget's not an option because it's expensive. That Instinct, Solar Instinct 2X, something like that. I like to know my steps throughout the day. I like to know my heart rate. I certainly like to be able to hit that top right button and get my grid coordinate. So that's kind of the watches that I use, but I've had really good luck with Garmin on those. Sunglasses, I don't wear sunglasses all of the time. I've bounced around with different sunglasses, and I would have to say the Gators Magnum is probably my favorite. They fit pretty tight to your head. A lot of military guys use those because they can jump with them, but I've had good luck with those. As far as vision glasses, I was using the Oakley, I think, half jackets because I can shoot with them. Recently, I had Gators make me a set of vision glasses with my prescription in them, and I can actually shoot with those as well. So as far as sunglasses go, really like the Gators Magnums. Again, they wrap to my head. They're not going to fall off during the wind when I'm climbing or whatever else. You can beat the shit out of them. Vision glasses, recently, my field set of glasses now is going to be those Gators Magnums. I can shoot with them on. They stay wrapped around my head, so I can, again, shoot with them. I say shoot a bow with them. So glass, because I kind of leave that out sometimes, but people ask of that. So I'm hitting an hour right now. I'm going to kind of listen through this again, make sure I didn't miss anything. But that's the backpack gear clothing section of this. And this is probably going to be, the next one's going to be an hour, and then one after that is going to be another hour. So this is going to be a 2 to 3 hour course. But as of right now, that is part one. Really appreciate all the positive feedback. The Born Primitive Outdoor podcast is definitely growing more and more and more. A lot of people didn't even know I was still doing a podcast. So definitely let your buddies know. I really like getting podcasts like this out. It certainly seems to help people that are looking at getting into the backpack hunting side of things. Again, I'm going to take some notes from this, figure out what I missed, add to it on part two. Part two is definitely going to start going into more of the technical stuff, gear hacks, things like that, how many miles per day you can do, food, stuff like that. So appreciate everybody tuning in. I'll see you at part two.